Live from LeadFeather Studios, it's the most controversial film podcast on the air. I Don't Give a Flick!
Let's do it. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode, a spooky episode, if you will, of I Don't Give a Flick. I'm your host, Johnny Blackburn, and alongside me this week, as he is every week, the very scary...
Gary Elmore.
Ooh. And with us from the grave is Neil Riley. Just kidding. We're actually sending our congratulations out to Neil and his wife. They are giving birth to their second child tonight. So congrats, guys, and he will be back for the next episode. I fucking love our horror movie episodes. I love the Halloween episodes when they come out because we get the best group of people, the most passionate fans, and the conversations they could go all night if we didn't have the 2-hour max limit. So let's jump right into it. I want to go ahead and welcome back for the 10th time, host of Cult and Trash Horror Movie Grind, Ian Webb. Ian, thanks so much for joining us again, man.
I have a number.
Are you sure?
Yeah.
The Texas education system would beg to differ, sir, and that's a fine organization, I tell you what.
That's a really good point. Well, okay, thanks for having me. Yeah, I agree. Yeah, we have a lot of fun with these horror episodes.
These are my favorite ones.
And this is also the one I'm least drunk for. If you wind the clocks back 2 years ago, I was so drunk I just said Texas Chainsaw Massacre 2 for every answer.
What was that for a Halloween episode or was that for the Christmas episode? It was for Halloween.
That was Halloween.
I thought there was another Christmas episode you didn't want to be on, that you came on and you had fallen asleep. That was the one your girlfriend was talking in the background.
Well, you're mixing two of them together.
What was that one?
The one that I was really drunk. Yeah, I fell asleep during the episode, and she was waking me up, and so you hear her going, "Hey, Ian,"
yeah,
and then you started making fun of me,
interrupting Gary. He's in the middle of this he's in this long, eloquent speech, and I hear, Ian, get up, Ian, and he's like, what? And Gary's just like, all right, I'll wait.
You fell asleep.
I'll wait.
And then you asked me, and then you went and asked me a question. I just went straight into it, and I didn't even know what I was talking about. It was probably about Texas Chainsaw Massacre too. Probably
either that or Dark Tower or Dark City or whatever the hell you always talk about. Yeah, that or Neil Breen. We're also going to welcome back, unfortunately, I don't even want to give you an introduction, Jacob, because even though you're the host of Jacob and Rhys versus Evil, I don't feel that you deserve that title. I feel like it should just be Rhys versus Evil, and you should not be on the podcast. So,
sorry, did y'all hear something? It sounded like an ant.
Wow, it sounded like an ant. That's your best one. It sounded like an ant. Right, because we all know that ants sound like a high-pitched fiddle. No, Jacob Johnson, always a pleasure to have you, man. It's all in good ribbon. It's all in fun. I love you.
Oh, I can't wait. Tonight's episode is going to be great. I get to talk about a certain movie.
If you bring that movie up, I'm going to cut all of your dialogue out of this podcast. Gary's going to cut all your dialogue. What do you think? What fucking movie? I swear to God, if you say that defined if that defined the teens, the 20 teens, I will kill you. It's going to happen.
Oh, okay.
Fuck you, man.
Okay.
We'll see. I swear to God. Anyways, we're saving the best for last. We're saving my friend, my favorite person in the entire fucking world. We got Jackie on with us tonight. Jackie.
Hi.
Thank you so much for joining us. Absolute pleasure.
Of course.
Yeah.
I'm really excited. I've never done this before, and I hope I actually do you right.
Oh, you will. I know you will. I got the pleasure of working with Jackie on a TV series here for Magnolia Network in Waco. Unfortunately, it was Waco, but the group of people we were with were absolutely fantastic. So it was, the juice was worth the squeeze on that one. So Jackie kind of just everybody knows Ian and Jacob pretty well, but we don't know you. So kind of give us a little background on how long you've been a horror fan, what you do in the TV and film business for a living, that kind of stuff.
Well, I've been a horror fan since I was I first walked in on my mother watching Chucky at 6 years old. And I just like stood in the hallway and was like, what is this? So then I really got into Nightmare on Elm Street, and my stepmother, she ran outside and started scratching on the windows. And all of us girls started screaming and running out of the house. We were like, "What the hell?" No, but I've been obsessed since I was a kid. And I ended up working on a movie with our good friend Deborah. She was a producer, and her husband was the CEO, camera operator, and I ended up being one of the featured extras. It's a film called Pickaxe, which is, I've got it signed right behind me. But it's a really, really terrible B horror movie that I died in.
Love it. Where can our listeners view that? Is it in circulation or
Amazon?
It's on Amazon. Okay.
Yeah, right. It's on Amazon, and it's a movie.
It's a movie. Good. Those are my favorite types of movies. Movies so bad. Yeah,
but I'm
just movies in general.
I always go to horror cons, and I buy a bunch of things, and I meet people, and I will say I've got 2 claims to fame. I've made an ass of myself in front of Joe Bob Briggs twice, even though I've got him tattooed on me twice.
He wouldn't care.
He didn't even realize. Like Darcy was so excited because I was like, look, I got 4 stars tattooed on me. Check it out. And she was like, oh, that's so sweet. And I was like, I told him a story that he just looked at me like, I don't get it. And then the second story I told him the second time I met him, I was like, yeah, you were really nervous, and I was even more nervous than you. And he's like, okay.
Security.
And I was like, I'm just obsessed with you. I'm sorry. So yeah, I really like this stuff.
Yeah, it seems like it's if you have it tattooed on your body, it seems like you're definitely a diehard fan. I wouldn't
only a little bit.
Just a little bit, just a little bit. Oh man. Okay, well, we're more than excited. I mean, excited isn't even really the correct word to describe the level of anticipation that I'm having for this conversation. Let's jump into it. So I do want to start out though. I want to see what everybody's been watching recently, and I have a feeling I know what Ian and Jacob are going to bring up because they were talking about it in our group thread this morning. But Jacob, let's start with you. What do you been horror wise? What have you been viewing to get the month of hell off to a start, or to end it? I guess by the time this comes out.
I know, right? I've actually been kind of light on horror this year, but
really,
Rising. Yeah, I don't know. This year felt different, so I wasn't like in the festive mood like I usually am. But I have been going through all the Hellraisers currently. I'm on number 7. So yeah, I didn't realize there was like over 10 of them at this point. I recently watched the remake, and I was like, I've only seen the first one. I've seen a little bit of the second one.
I didn't see the remake. I wasn't.
I really liked it. I don't think it's like amazing, but it's like I was telling Ian, I think it's my third favorite of this franchise behind original and the second one.
Were you saying that you thought they did a really cool job of the new interpretation of Pinhead, or you didn't like the new interpretation of him?
No, I thought she was really great as Pinhead. It was mostly like kind of I think just a lot of the dialogue and a lot of the character stuff wasn't up to par. I loved a lot of the twists and turns. The gore was really great. Like the set pieces, some good villains, and also like a little. Go for it.
The costumes on the Cenobites for sure. I guess leather. It was like their skin was all like torn up and turned into a costume. Like that was cool. That was right.
Yeah, there's a lot more practical effects than I was expecting.
I agree with y'all on that, but honestly, that's the first thing that I was thinking about. And I watched it last night, and I can't tell you anything about the movie because I was so uninterested. I was doing my puzzle.
Yeah.
I thought it was pretty. I thought it was gorgeous. I loved the special effects and everything. There was nothing as far as the story for me.
Yeah, same here. And like the character development, like it was all like
garbage.
Dimensional characters,
non-existent.
Yeah. It reminded me a lot of the Evil Dead remake, which I absolutely love. I
love it. Yeah,
the remake.
I think the Evil Dead remake was definitely better.
Yeah, but they both share similar themes because the whole movie is about addiction and like the fact that she's going out of her way to think that she can save her brother, but in turn is destroying everyone else and killing everything around her. Basically, she's destroying her own life. And so, I liked a lot of those themes. And Pinhead's just like she's just having a ball. She's just like, yeah, I'm really liking where this is going, and just kind of lets her play the game. And then I liked a lot of the lore dives too, because like I was telling Ian. And it brought back the horniness of Hellraiser, I thought.
Yeah.
I feel
That's what I was hoping for in that remake, because they typically lose a lot of those elements normally.
That's nowhere near the level of
there was so much horniness in the original.
There was. Agree. But that's what was so great about it. But also, like,
right.
But I thought it brought it back more so than any of the sequels after, really.
That is true.
I agree with that.
Not the worst movie.
And the way it delved into the lore, similar to the Evil Dead remake, because they even have a moment where they pick up basically the Necronomicon that's telling them all about like all the different realms of the other dimension. They even bring up Leviathan as like this great beast and god. And it's like, that's the stuff I'm into. That's why like I really like Hellraiser 2 as well, because they totally just go into like hell and just talk about like the lore of it.
That one was so amazing. That was
I enjoy Hellraiser 2.
Yeah.
But I didn't.
No, you're good. No, I totally get it. But those are the things I liked about it. But yeah, especially like the first one's untouchable. Like Doug Bradley, I think it's Doug Bradley, as Pinhead can't be touched really. I think Jamie, I forget her name, but I thought she did a really good job, and I think kind of like Jack Daryl Haley, I thought he would have been a great replacement for Freddy Krueger. That was just a terrible movie. Yeah,
it was a bad adaptation. Yeah,
but kind of going through the rest of the franchise, it's like there's a lot of cool ideas and concepts. Like I was telling Ian, I actually liked number 4 a lot, but it kind of just the story of it's really cool because it's jumping between 3 different timelines and how the box was created, how it's represented in our present day, and then like how it's destroyed in the future. And it's like that stuff's really cool, and it's all about like family lineage, but it's just like the execution is kind of poor. Kind of like the new Halloween Ends. Like a lot of great ideas, terrible execution.
The new Texas Chainsaw Massacre was a really horrible piece.
Oh yeah, God, I hated it so much.
Yeah, but I didn't expect anything like that.
I like the gore.
The gore was good.
I'm a gore girl.
No,
I'm Splatter fan. I don't blame you.
Especially since it was just dropped on Netflix. As soon as you see the trailer and it's like Leatherface killing millennials, it's like, fuck yeah, I am in. Or Gen Zers. Either way.
Do something, I'll cancel you.
But
the only thing that really got to me was like the whole cell phone coverage and everything.
Yeah.
I was like, come on.
Trying to cancel him, I was just like,
loved it. It was so stupid.
Something that like people pretend to even exist.
At this point, Leatherface, just like Michael Myers, is like 100 goddamn years old. It's like I gotta suspend disbelief, and the fact that it's just like. walk onto a bus full of Gen Zers.
And all of a sudden, he has like a foster mother that never exists. I mean, he has a different family in each movie, so I understand that. But like,
anyway, it's getting off topic. We could go into a whole nother discussion.
That's what you've been jamming on. The Hellraiser franchise. Yeah, I got you. Yeah, that's a solid one to get your month going with.
Yeah, I just have one comment real quick on that. Pinhead, she was really cool. She was scary. Her voice was really cool. She definitely like was Pinhead until you like watched the first one after that, and you see like the original guy like, I'll tear your soul apart, and I'm like, holy shit. Okay, never mind.
I did like that she had original quotes. And I really liked her.
Okay. Yeah, I still haven't seen it yet, so I'm
really
itching to. Looking forward to.
Well, here's all your spoilers.
I want to hear your take
on the original
after you see it.
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, I saw the first two, and then I saw the one in space, and then I saw one random one, A Party at a Mansion, that was done in like late 2000s. Maybe early 2000s.
Oh, is that the Hell World? I think that's when they're like
might have been Hell World.
Like a video game.
Kind of. It was
actually like
there
a
was
villain.
There was a party at a mansion, I remember, and so one of the kids gets trapped down in the basement, and Pinhead comes to them. But like down in the basement, it used to be a laboratory where they dissected people and shit, and so there was a ton of basically torture devices. Anyways, I'm basically describing all of them.
I was about to jump in and say they're all a party at the mansion.
Yeah, well, not all of them, but anyways, so Jackie, what have you been jamming on recently outside of the remakes?
Well, as you know, I too, while we were in Waco, I saw Smile.
Yes.
And
I was hoping you would bring that up.
How did you know I would?
Just a hunch.
And what you and I said to each other was, it was a movie.
It was a movie.
I had a friend come over earlier today, and we had a conversation, and we were talking about how I was going to be on here with y'all and everything. And she was like, well, I'm going to go see Smile later. And I was like, it was a movie. I was like, I really hate that people are saying it's like the scariest movie ever. In no way, shape, or form was it scary. It had a couple cool scenes, but like what you and I talked about was like, it's just a stereotypical, this movie has been written 100 times before.
3 scripts are current. We were same thing. 3 scripts have been currently circulating in the horror genre for the last decade, and it's just a recycled format.
Yep.
There was nothing. There was nothing new about it. You know, I mean, a couple different, a different type of monster.
Yeah, and even watching the previews, I was like, "This looks, looks like Bye Bye Man level of bad."
Yeah. It was a little better than Bye Bye Man, but still, like, it was.
Especially after watching Pearl, where Mia Goth just is the creepy. Like, she can do the creepiest smile. I was like, everything in Pearl was creepier than anything I saw in the previews for Smile. So that made me not want to go see it.
Well, that's why I went and saw it while I was out of town for work and didn't go with my boyfriend, because I was like, I don't have high hopes for this, and I think I'd rather see Barbarian, which I haven't seen yet.
Still need to see that too. Looks great.
Oh, you should have seen that.
It's so bad. No, I wanted to wait and go see the better movie with my boyfriend.
Yeah, it makes sense. Makes sense. Yeah. I totally agree. I mean, it was a big letdown for me. And honestly, because we were in Waco for those first 2 weeks, I really have just, since I gotten back over the last couple of days, I just started watching my horror movies again. You know, I just started watching Dahmer. You know, yeah, exactly. You know, and started rewatching all my classics that I love every Halloween. Gary, what about you, man? Did you jump into Hocus Pocus yet? I know that's normally your go-to beginning horror film.
No, I haven't watched Hocus Pocus yet. I did watch. I don't know if you'd call it a Halloween film, but I watched this one called A Tale of Tales a couple of days ago. And,
okay. I don't think so.
Yeah, it was kind of like a horror-ish film. It was like 3 Italian stories that like the Brothers Grimm would have made, but they were like Italian, so they were kind of like cheap and knockoffs.
Okay.
And it had John C. Reilly and what's her name, Selma Hayek in it.
Yes, that's right. V was telling me about that. Okay, that's right. She was telling me about that the other way. Okay, all right. So you did watch that. Okay, it was pretty good.
Yeah. No.
You didn't like it at all? Okay.
No. I mean, it was quite ridiculous.
Oh no.
Yeah.
No.
Yeah.
It was awful.
I mean, I wouldn't say it was awful, but like it wasn't super great. I see what they were trying to do, but I just I don't know if I'd put that on my recommend pile. I wouldn't. I know I wouldn't.
Well, glad to know we got that one out of the way. So if anybody has that on your recommendation for the week, freaking, get rid of it.
What year did it come out?
I think it was 20.
Wait.
Yeah, I think it was 2015 or 2014.
Oh, okay.
What do you mean? Oh, okay.
Well, because I was wondering, I was like trying to think of Selma Hayek in a horror movie since like From Dusk Till Dawn. I was like, what?
Yeah, that's
when did this come out?
Yeah, good point.
Yeah. I had never heard of it before the other week, so I don't blame you for not knowing it.
I want to say I've heard of it before.
She's doing a lot of like more like I guess underground movies lately.
She did Mom and Dad.
Was that like a more mainstream movie?
Now, Mom and Dad Saved the World. That was a great movie.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah,
that's right. I saw her recently in Bliss, which was like direct to Amazon, like a rip off of The Matrix. Anyway, I'm totally getting off subject.
She was great in Wild Wild West. I don't know if you guys remember that movie.
Oh yeah.
Yeah. Oh yeah, we remember that one.
Great and
Yeah. That was
where Kenneth Branagh gets to be openly racist.
You're the first person probably in history to ever say the words "great" at a Wild Wild West sentence.
It's a good movie. I mean, was it smart for
Will Smith?
Was it smart for Will Smith to turn the
Burger
Matrix
King
down
toys
for
are
Wild
great.
Wild West?
They were great. That's a good point, Jacob. They were pretty great, and I really enjoyed, Will Smith's clean lyrics with all of his rap albums. Especially in the Wild Wild West soundtrack.
I don't.
I
and his ripoff is off of classics.
I really fucking don't.
You probably shouldn't say anything
I don't
bad
either,
about Will
but
Smith
it's
or his
fun to
old
pretend. Ian, I guess I forgot to ask you, have you been watching anything differently than what we've talked about?
Not really. I mean, other than Hellraiser, like we mentioned earlier. For some reason, like the funny thing is, like every October I don't watch horror movies like at all. It's not like a rule or anything. It just happens to be like I'm not in the mood. I'm just like whatever. I'm very like different. I don't know. Like I'm not like everybody else is like, oh, it's October, we have to watch every horror movie every day of the month. No, I'm just like I don't know. I'm just not feeling it. So
because we're watching them all the time.
We are. That's true. I mean, your podcast is a horror podcast. Both you and Jacob. So it doesn't surprise me.
Yeah, exactly. Now, I guess speaking of my podcast, I would like to say that I'm gearing up for November, which will be. I'm calling Grind November.
Yes.
Which
I just was just on actually. Yeah.
Yeah, in a future episode that hasn't come out, won't come out until actual November. But yes,
Yes. Speaking of these older movies, I kind of wanted to jump into this one by going back a little bit and just kind of comparing and contrasting the movies from the last decade, 15 years, whatever, compared to the horror movies that we grew up with. And that can still be movies that your parents let you watch, from slashers from the 70s and 80s. That's fine. But Jacob, let's start with you. What's different in what's different in how they, so I guess I can kind of just, like, one big thing for me at least was back in the day, they used a lot of music to build up the suspense and anticipation. That was a huge thing. Always high-pitched string instruments, sometimes a lot of woodwind. It just depended, But nowadays, a lot of it's built up in either complete silence or ADR, some type of sound effect maybe, but it's much more simplistic. There's really no music at all to build up the suspension. And for a psychological horror, I actually kind of appreciate that. I think that It Follows did a really fantastic job, a really masterful, well done composition there. I don't remember the name of the gentleman that did it, but I thought that was one of the few that kind of hit it out of the park. I prefer the old school, letting the music build that suspense up. But anyways, Jacob, so something along those lines. What do you like and dislike about how they're making them nowadays, and what do you miss?
Oh man, I mean, it feels like practical effects have made a resurgence, like I was talking about with Hellraiser.
Yeah, Babadook, and talk about that one a lot.
And I feel like those practical effects are kind of back in for the most part. Even the new Halloween movies, even though I didn't like Ends, I still applaud it for really, not really throwing in random CGI here and there for, stupid kills. It actually kept it pretty practical, and there's even one kill in there that's pretty awesome. And I mean, even I hated Halloween Kills, but that movie, the gore in that's really great. I haven't seen the second Terrifier, but that's out in theaters right now, and it's so gory. People are apparently fainting and vomiting and whatnot. So it's awesome to have those practical effects back, and to the point where people are talking about it versus going back to the 2011 remake of The Thing, where it was remake prequel, where it was almost all CGI with Mary Elizabeth Winstead, where that entire movie, all the creature effects were CGI, and it was because the producers just wanted to save an extra buck. And then you can watch documentaries on the making of that movie, and you saw that they built practical effects for everything. There's even one creature in particular towards the end, you're supposed to meet an alien within the Thing's ship, and they built this creature. It kind of almost reminds me of the brain bug from Starship Troopers, and they didn't want to take the time to actually get working and whatnot, so they just covered up with blocky CGI. It literally looks like something out of the Pixels movie is how bad it is. So I will say it's mostly practical effects. You go back all the way back to the 30s with Dracula, Frankenstein, and Mummy and stuff, and those movies. Yeah, Nosferatu. It's just amazing what they were able to accomplish. Whatever. It's amazing what they were able to accomplish, even going all the way up to probably the early 90s. Probably mid 90s is when they started really going oh shit, we can save a buck here and there. I mean, even the Hellraiser franchise does that. They started introducing CGI. I think there's the space, but they also were introducing it in 3 as well. There was some stuff in there where it's that looks like a T-1000. So yeah, it's
really nice by the way.
Yeah. And so yeah, that's, to me, it's practical effects. But I will say that at least they're kind of on the resurgence right now, which is awesome.
I think we've all talked about equally hating the overuse of CGI in films, with the exception of maybe a sci-fi world building adventure kind of thing. It's too much, it's the special effects team back in those days, they were the last cowboys, the last pioneers, when it came to the, the film set kind of thing. Jackie, what about you? What do you kind of miss about movies from back when we were kids and grown up watching those?
Honestly, let me continue on the CGI thing, because that's exactly what I wanted to talk about. I'm so sick of it. And the only movies that I have liked recently are movies that have nothing to do with CGI. For something a little bit more mainstream, like Insidious, there was no CGI on it. And we were talking about Smile earlier. Let me tell you, the smiles on that were a lot more creepy. You know?
Yeah.
What I do miss from before, or what I do like now, is the fact that the gore is a little bit better. I'm a gore girl. Right. You give me the blood splatter brains. Give me it. I'm here for it.
Are you a big torture porn fan? Just out of curiosity.
Not necessarily.
Okay. All right.
It depends.
Okay.
I do tell a story quite often that I was on a search for the best made worst horror film, and I found it, and I went through a lot of torture porn going through that.
What was the movie?
Yes.
Human Centipede?
God, no. It makes feeling...
That movie?
No, it's fucking...
Green Room, or what was that called?
Green
Forest?
No.
Green no.
Serbian film.
Green Inferno. Are you talking about Green Inferno, Gary?
A Serbian film.
Yeah. Oh,
a Serbian film. Okay, yeah. All right. I was close. I was close. All right.
So I've got a poster.
With Green Inferno?
I've got a Green Inferno was lame as fuck.
Disgusting though. For me.
I mean, when he's jerking off,
the tongues, dude. Like, I don't know. I'll watch it, but
No, it's funny because my boyfriend, he's heard so many things about a Serbian film.
Yeah.
And he went to go buy it, and he got a poster instead of buying the actual movie, and it's hanging up at my house. And I told him, I said, I might watch it again with you, but probably not. Like, that's one of the few films I'll never watch again.
It's too much. That's what.
It's too much. My cousin, I told her about it. I didn't tell her. I just said, don't watch it. I tried to watch it with her. She made it halfway through, said, I can't do this. Then told everybody, this is the worst made movie ever. And I was like, you didn't even make it through it, bitch.
Probably not the worst made.
No, like worst actual. I said best made
content wise.
Film.
Well, you haven't seen Ghost Rider: Spirit of Vengeance.
What? You're right. I don't think anybody has.
Or the remake.
I'm gonna need you to stop
horror.
right now because you do not talk about my Lord and Savior, Sir Nicolas Cage. Okay.
Look. He's okay in that movie. Anything else about that movie is awful. Yes, I applaud you.
Bad.
I really want to watch some vampires kiss right now.
Not all of them.
I just showed my.
Oh my God, Jackie!
A friend of mine has that pillow.
You'll love this. Then I showed my girlfriend Con Air, and she went up to me with Roadhouse. I thought Roadhouse was like even more ridiculous than Con Air, which I thought was unattainable.
Roadhouse is amazing.
Oh, keep going.
Roadhouse is a great movie.
You got to go back and watch it. That shit it's batshit insane in the best way.
Exactly.
Yeah.
I love the apartment that he gets, which is just like a loft above a barn. It's like he's like,
it's like Smallville. Clark Kent.
Yeah, it is.
Beautiful view of the lake. Yeah.
Yeah, Gary. That's when I watch Roadhouse. I'm like, man, I can't wait for that lake scene to pop up.
Yeah.
And watch him. Yeah, stare, be all pensive and shit, looking out onto the distance, the horizon, and contemplating his life.
Yeah, he can fuck his girlfriend in front of the villain across the pond.
Nice.
I wonder what
that movie is insane.
I have a comment about the back to the CGI thing.
Yeah,
I agree with everybody. Yeah, it's pretty shitty. We all don't like it. I will, however, say, give it this. It's getting better over the decades.
Of course.
Yeah. Well,
I have to say decades. But like, I mean, if you go back to the mid 2000s, like they were just like throwing just CGI horror, or not just horror, but every genre. It was just like just CGI, just do it, just pump it out, and it was so much worse. Like if you take I mentioned a couple minutes ago the remake to Amityville Horror, so bad, and it was just like they were like, this is what we're doing with horror now. This is it. Like this is what you got. And so now, I mean, it's still bad, but it's
13 Ghosts.
Oh God!
No, don't talk about 13 Ghosts. That movie.
13 Ghosts.
Chef's kiss.
I love it. It does have a lot of CGI.
Yeah.
So dumb.
I mean,
I love it because it's so dumb.
It's getting better.
It's so good.
I love Event Horizon. Event Horizon has some really bad CGI and some dumb punch effects.
Yeah.
Oh, dude, it's so dumb, but I love it so much.
Yeah.
What'd you say, Gary?
And Matthew Lillard is a sweet baby angel.
I said it does have good practical effects to it, though. Like in parts, like in parts of it.
It does. It's definitely a movie that you know.
It's just that CGI can really sometimes offset the practical effects. Like
very much so.
It just takes you out of it. You're like, man, that looks so good, and then it's like, oh, that looks like absolute shit.
It is getting better, but if you take, there's a lot of recently made practical effects movies, and they're just like so much better, but they're not like, they're all obscure. Like none of the movie theater movies have practical effects. It's all like the straight to like video on demand or streaming or whatever.
I would disagree. Kind of going back to what Jackie was saying about Insidious and stuff, and then even like Ari Aster's stuff.
And
stuff as well.
Yeah, Get Out didn't have a ton of.
I walked out of Nope.
But
I felt like.
Then you have movies like Psycho Goreman.
Out of Nope.
Oh, loved Nope. Loved it.
It was
why
so fucking terrible.
It was
there was no story. There was and a coworker that
There's gonna be a lot of upset.
It's all right, Jackie. This is how he reacts when I say Hereditary Blue. Go ahead, keep going.
Okay, I agree with you there, Johnny.
Oh my God!
I still haven't seen Hereditary.
Go see it. Go see it. It's worth a watch. It's worth a watch.
I will. Like, I'm almost afraid that I'll like it, and then I'll say to you, Johnny, like, you're full of shit. And I don't want to do that. So that's the reason that's kept me from watching it.
No, I was so excited about Nope, and we we got ready for date night, and we're going, and we're sitting there, and we're like eating our popcorn. And we're like, there's like 3 people there, and I look at my boyfriend and I'm like, babe, is this going anywhere? And he's like, I don't think it is. And I was like, well, let's give it a chance. I'm the kind of person that will always finish a movie. Yeah. And we're halfway through it, and I said, let's get the fuck out of here and go to a bar because
man.
Jacob is seething right now.
Well, no, I honestly, especially with some people might have been like setting certain expectations, but like watching it, like all the themes, all the animal stuff, like the whole nature documentary, it was like it felt so Spielbergian. It reminded me of Jaws, and even like a lot of his earlier work, where I was just like, no, seriously, because the whole movie's about an animal that spoilers. The whole movie's about an animal hunting people and killing them, and the whole point of the movie is they got to prove that this thing exists, and whether or not they actually kill it in the end is what matters. But like the fact that we haven't had really outside of the xenomorph and stuff, where it was like, okay, it's not a ship, it's an actual being, it's just here to eat. And then also the themes of like bad miracles, how you interpret miracles. Like you might think something that happened to you that was sort of miraculous, you might think it might have been some sort of divine intervention, was actually just pure chance. Like, and that's what that whole movie is all about. It's just like, you shouldn't buy into God. You shouldn't buy into heaven or divine intervention. It's all kind of bullshit.
Just for y'all, I will rewatch it. I mean, I had already planned on.
I mean, Johnny didn't like it either.
Like it either, Jackie. You don't have to rewatch. You don't have to rewatch shit. Look, Jacob, what you're saying is accurate. I'm not going to dispute it. You know, I hate movies that are overly symbolic for the sake of being symbolic, and it was.
Well, it was also just a straightforward monster movie.
You and I agree, Johnny.
Yeah,
I thought it was a straightforward monster movie, but
no, what are you kidding me?
Yeah,
even Get Out was just riddled with all that, but Get Out was done really well.
Get Out's excellent. I like it more than Nope. Movie. But
sure.
I think Nope more than Us.
Opinion, I thought Us was better.
I liked Us too. I like both. I loved Us.
The ending was garbage. It didn't make any sense. But the
hands around the world.
It was a little. It
didn't make any sense. It's a flip flop. No, it didn't make any sense. But the majority of the movie I thought was incredible, and I'm a huge fan of Jordan Peele. I mean, between his comedy and his horror, like, I love all of it. Nope was Nope for me.
How long have you been waiting to say that?
Two thumbs.
I love your face, too.
How long have you had that in the barrel? Yeah. Since the beginning of the show. Love it. Yeah. I love it. Gary, what do you think? Let's jump to you. I know you're not as big into the modern day horror films. You're more of a fan of the classics. What do you miss? What do you miss about what they did back in the olden days, or what do you like that they're doing now?
Well, I think that what it is that they show too much nowadays, almost. Like,
I totally agree with that.
Yeah, like back in and whether it's because standards have become more relaxed on various things, and they can get away with putting more in the movie, or they just have the capability to do it now with better CGI. A lot of things that are terrifying are the things that you don't know, and the things that the movie lets you build your own sort of idea about. So like Jaws, for example, you hardly ever saw, the shark,
right.
And except for specific parts. That was, due to, malfunctions on the ability of the, animatronics to get them to work. But it also made the movie much more terrifying because they had to focus more on the people, and the shark was just sort of this thing that came in. And I think for me, like, one of the things I don't like is like how much they show rather than planting the idea inside your head and letting your own imagination kind of run with it.
Yeah, exactly. I have actually another example of that, which is going to make me sound like a one-track mind, which I do. The original Amityville Horror, there's a scene where the main character, he sees the spirit, the force that's been like plaguing their house, and you don't see that because it's not even filmable. Like it's not even like a human thing. But anyway, they couldn't possibly have it on camera. So they featured the guy, his reaction to seeing it, and you see him just reacting to what he's seeing, and it's so terrifying. Like, just seeing his reaction to it, his face, is scary enough. And then there's movies like The Shining, where sometimes you do see the things in The Shining, but a lot of that you see like Wendy or Danny, their faces, and when they're being scared, and that itself is really scary.
Yeah, like it's infinitely more terrifying to like see. What is the girl's name that played Olive Oil? That was in The Shining.
Shelley Long. No, sorry, that was the chick from Cheers.
Duvall.
Shelley Duvall. Thank you, Shelley Duvall. Yeah.
Like it's infinitely more it's infinitely more terrifying to see her like putting some like cooking food or dinner in the kitchen, and then just see her kind of look up, and then that look of terror kind of build on her face.
When she sees the bear giving the guy a blowjob, and then it just like instant like extreme camera zoom up to her face, and she's like, "Oh my god!"
I've got that sticker on my fridge.
Really?
Oh yeah.
Her face or the bear giving the guy a blowjob?
The bear giving the guy a blowjob.
But and then also like the elevator coming down with the blood, and then it shows Danny, and he's just like wide open face, and he's like and that's pretty scary too.
Yeah. No, I agree.
Yeah. So it sounds like we all agree that there's a lot of things that we miss from back in the golden years of horror, but there's still a few things that the more modern horrors have done okay. They've improved on a few things with time and time comes progress, especially with, the progress of technology and CGI and, getting better practical effects nowadays, or learning how to create them. So we wanted to go ahead and this episode is obviously about what's changed in horror since its original conception all the way to present day. But I really wanted to look at the evolution of horror by decade. So I wanted to go ahead and we're going to collectively put the 1920s through the 1950s all together. Okay. Basically what we're going to do is we're going to go through and everyone's going to give what movie they thought was either their favorite, the most iconic, the most game-changing horror film of that decade. It's okay if you guys repeat the movies. That's perfectly fine. And I think through the talking about the films and the natural conversation, organically, we're going to come across the evolution of horror through each decade just by us chatting about these films. So let's jump into it. Jacob, I want to start with you again. Let's jump into what movie did you think was the defining horror film from the 20s to the 50s? What started us off? What was the timeline of horror like before Alfred Hitchcock and sci-fi horrors came around in the 60s?
Well, you had more of the gothic type stuff like Nosferatu, right. A lot of men making their own monsters. Too. Yeah, I was actually going to talk about that.
I know. That's what I said at first.
Yeah, because that was going to be...
Son of a bitch.
Yes. But yeah, mostly a lot more of the gothic type stuff. The Universal monsters for sure. Creature from Black Lagoon was kind of always one of my favorites growing up. Just the sort of outcast, the monsters. Bride of Frankenstein is probably still one of the best horror movies ever made. That type of stuff. For me specifically, in the 50s, funny enough, Creature from Black Lagoon came out the same year as Ishiro Honda's Gojira, also known as Godzilla.
Nice.
Yeah. Though there had been kaiju movies before that, like Beast from 20,000 Fathoms. I think it's Beast from 20,000 Fathoms, which was kind of an inspiration for Gojira, but Gojira was, a direct metaphor for Hiroshima and Nagasaki for our misuse of nuclear weapons and mankind meddling with nature. And so that whole movie is based around, and so the whole movie is based around that, even down to the costume. Like Godzilla's skin on his costume is based off of real victims that suffered from Hiroshima and Nagasaki.
Yeah.
And so from there spawned 37 films, and Godzilla's going still strong to this day. I mean, like when COVID started, Godzilla vs. Kong was one of the most watched movies ever. And though, like,
it was the only movie that
it was the only movie.
There wasn't a ton of options like today. That's for damn sure.
I can show you where exactly it's filmed.
Oh yeah.
Oh, that's awesome.
Do it.
It was filmed in Atlanta.
Cool.
If we're out there, that's pretty sweet. I didn't know it was filmed in Atlanta.
Yeah.
Shit.
Yeah.
But yeah, it's like it's still going strong, and like it's also a very flexible franchise. Like they reboot the canon every so often. Pretty much
did.
I mean, just the Godzilla from 2014 all the way to Godzilla Kong is one canon, but they also the Japanese version has like Shin Godzilla, which is completely different and probably the most insane version of Godzilla that there is. In fact, just going down to making him more of a kind of like a John Carpenter's The Thing, where he can actually spawn little Godzillas out of his tail and stuff, just like really freaky type stuff. Yeah, the movie ends with his tail. So once he's frozen, the movie ends with a bunch of humanoid Godzillas hopping out of his tail. So they were able to freeze him. Yeah, cool. Because they also talk about, like, at some point Godzilla's evolution would get to the point where he would be able to fly. Yeah, that movie is pretty nuts, but it's also by, oh gosh, I already forgot his name, from the creator of Evangelion. So you have a man who's already, like, obsessed with, like, crazy kaiju and giant mechs. So he was able to do some cool things with that, and also some like direct inspiration from anime as well as even Studio Ghibli. Like there's a scene in there that's specifically from one of their movies, Nausicaa. But yeah, like to me for the 50s specifically, it would definitely be Godzilla. Yeah.
Okay, I can see that. I mean, I always know that's outside of being the most iconic. That's just in general, you've always had a huge affinity for kaiju movies. Yeah,
it also made monster movies serious, right? Like before then, it was basically just like low grade B movies. Like there was a point to Godzilla. It was basically showing it was basically the Japanese like telling the world like we can't let this happen to anybody else.
Yeah,
and then
go ahead, keep going.
Go for it. No, and it's kind of going back to the canon and stuff. He flips from being a hero to a villain to a force of nature constantly, and that was kind of always a takeaway. Is like Godzilla's not just a creature; he's like a hurricane, a force of nature, a tornado, something that humanity can't stop. And that's kind of like what's frustrating about today is like, humanity is not in charge of things, and we need to be put in our place sometimes.
Yeah, that's definitely what they were trying to convey with the films for sure. Gary, what about you? Which one do you think was probably either your favorite or just the most iconic of the first 40 years of horror?
For me, the most iconic was probably Nosferatu. It was one of the earliest ones that I'm aware of. I think it was like 23 or 22 or something.
22.
22.
It was like the first one, really.
There was one in 1898 actually that I was reading about today. That was like part of like the fast moving clip pictures and stuff, like at the Nickelodeons and crap. I can't remember the damn name. It was called like The Haunted House or something. It was real generic, and it was considered to be the first horror movie ever. But sorry, Gary, keep going.
Yeah, but like it just sort of took the idea of like the vampire and like was showing them on like how rising up out of the grave and like just this haunting image, and it was a silent movie, so it wasn't one of them talkies like they have nowadays.
Nosferatu
he was scary looking too.
He was, and Nosferatu did such a great job of creating, really and truly. And Ian, you are correct in the fact that it was probably, at least in my mind, the first mainstream horror film that started the genre. It was the birth of mainstream horror.
I agree.
Yeah.
It's Dracula. Like the whole thing is just Dracula.
Right.
Well,
exactly. Yeah.
Because they wanted it to be Dracula, and it follows the story of they couldn't get the rights from it. Yes, the family of what was his name?
Stoker.
Bram Stoker wouldn't allow them to, so they had to change the title.
Really?
But it's the exact same story as Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Yeah. I would, just to play devil's advocate here, I would say that the original Dracula would have been mine to be what I would consider to be the most iconic. Not only did it start the vampire genre, which really did hold top billing for at least the 30s and 40s because Bela Lugosi became such a megastar at the time. And I know a lot of people only know him from that and his minor role in Plan 9 from Outer Space, but he did a lot of really good work. And I think that really it was the first monster that was almost sexy. It was we talk about how
almost.
Some people would disagree.
He was very
sure.
Yeah, he what's the word for it?
You talk about the horniness that we were talking about with a lot of those 80s slashers and stuff. I think that there was a ton of that. He was very charming, but the character of Dracula is appealing because it is sexy and it is. Yeah. It's raunchy in a seductive way,
Bela Lugosi, above anybody who ever played Dracula, like really brought that charm to it. Like he was very appealing.
He was a leading man.
Not just sexually, but like
I'm going to keep my mouth shut and just let all the guys talk about how sexy Dracula is.
Nice.
I mean, I fucking love Gary Oldman as Dracula. And
I think he's my favorite Dracula for sure.
Top hat and he's sitting in that Victorian garb. I'm just like, fuck.
Nice. He's my favorite. Gary Oldman's my favorite Dracula. No, I was done. I was done. Actually, Jackie, to you then, what would be the most iconic movie for you, Jackie, then, pre-1960?
I'm gonna, I think that all of y'all are going to disagree with me. Because of course I was going to say Nosferatu, and I said I can't say Nosferatu.
Sure.
No offense, Gary. No offense, Gary. But I chose something that wouldn't be considered as a horror film.
Great.
I chose Metropolis.
Ooh.
Okay.
All right.
Metropolis. That's funny.
That's
nice.
Honestly. Well, shit. All right, I'm out.
Ian.
I got music.
I knew it might be a little controversial, but I mean, the whole hive mentality type situation, and the fact that, he's trying to prove to his betrothed that he can actually be a worker, and not only, it's scary to start a new relationship. It's scary to be with somebody who is like kind of, a really intense, empath. And also, work fucking sucks, and it's scary sometimes.
True.
I mean, anytime you start a new job, aren't you scared? I'm scared.
I'm scared right now.
I'm petrified.
I am petrified. I'm terrified. What's going to happen next?
It's funny. Like, Fritz Lang was a master of horror movies, but not directly making horror movies, which is funny.
Like the clip of like all the workers like going in a single file line while the other workers are like clocking out, and like
it gets me every time.
Yeah. And that really sticks with me, and it's
right
like, man, that's so depressing, but also like a terrifying kind of like.
Exactly, and that's why I chose it. I was like, I can't think of, because I'll sit there and I'll watch, black and white movies, like horror movies and everything, and nothing has got me in the gets like Metropolis.
Okay.
I can feel it right now. Like, just thinking about that movie, it's so beautiful. Like, it's one of my favorite all-time movies. I just love it so much.
Love it. I love those far-reaching out there ones that no one else will pick. And speaking of those types of picks, our next guest probably has just that for us. Ian, what's yours?
I don't. I wanted to do Nosferatu. It was picked. I wanted to do Dracula.
I think we all would have done Nosferatu as like most influential, but it's
probably.
Sure. There were only like 4 movies before 1960s.
Any of those.
That's what I was thinking. Okay, come on. There's some great shit before 1960.
Let's be fair, and Ian, I will let you start the 1960s. Okay, I will let you start the Alfred Hitchcock and sci-fi era.
Well, let me actually answer your question. I'll go with Frankenstein. Frankenstein was
Devil's advocate. Go ahead.
Yeah, you guys was like a giant walking corpse that. At the time, especially the book was pretty scary, but the movie, you got this giant walking corpse. He looks scary. He's a Halloween costume. He's all over. Abbott and Costello ran from him, and so Frankenstein.
Okay. What I think is interesting about Frankenstein, if I can jump in, is just that a lot of people, when they say Frankenstein, they mean Frankenstein's monster.
Well, but I'm just saying the movie of Frankenstein.
I like your take on that.
Yeah.
But of course. Yeah, there's always that guy who's like, oh, no, I'm talking about Frankenstein's monster. And Frankenstein himself is really the real monster. And that's very true. But I'm just saying, like, the movie Frankenstein is a horror movie. Basically, the monster and the scientist himself, they're both Frankenstein. It's like you call him Frankenstein Jr., really.
And man, the scene when when the monster throws the girl into the water, but she can't swim, it's just like, it's so sad and tragic because he doesn't mean to kill her. He just doesn't know any better.
Well, he's like, he doesn't mean to be a monster. He's terrifying just because of like, it's because he looks terrifying. He's huge. He's made out of different parts. He's green. He just like, he's also like a day old. Like he's an infant in the body of like this giant monster.
The scene when they're the scene where they're putting on the Ritz, that's a fantastic scene too.
Gene Wilder, one of the greatest horror directors of all time. No.
Yeah. That also fits in with Godzilla because it is man who made the monster.
Yeah, exactly. And then
it's all about man's hubris, think that they can be playing God, and they really can't.
Yeah, and then you see the clips of Dr. Frankenstein himself, who's like, his obsession is so extreme. And like, he's just, when he's like, give my creature life, and then they do, and he's like, it's alive, that classic thing. And he's like, they thought I was mad, but who's mad now? And like, that was just like, the amount of obsession that goes into it, that's pretty scary too, because like when we see that in ourselves or our loved ones, like it's like, whoa, like step back, like that's a little too much.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Right.
Yeah. Mary Shelley is the mother of horror.
Indeed,
100%.
indeed.
Yeah.
So Ian, start us off with the 1960s. Okay. Then this is where we really get the train really starts rolling here, and starts hitting momentum when it explodes here in some of the later decades. But 60s, what do you think was the most iconic, or your favorite, most memorable one, whatever?
I want to say most iconic, but it is iconic for sure. Okay. But more in the cultier aspects. Since I have the cult podcast, I'll try to kind of actually remain in that for some of these categories, some of these decades. I'm going to go with Black Sabbath, 1963.
Oh,
okay.
Okay.
Explain why.
I mean, there's so many other movies, like you said, Alfred Hitchcock earlier. I mean, I almost went with Psycho, and so in a way, I'm cheating because I'm saying Psycho right now, and that would have been my pick, but yeah, Black Sabbath, 1963. I mean, honestly, I saw it a long time ago. I don't really remember it, but I do remember enjoying it. But mostly the reason why I picked it is because it was, when it came out, it had definitely like, it was the movie that like everybody was afraid of. Like it was what everybody was talking about, and they couldn't. It's like what people are like talking about now with the current movies that we spent the first half hour or so talking about. Like this was so scary that like one of the most influential classic blues rock bands of the 1970s, Black Sabbath, named themselves after this movie that invented the genre of heavy metal, almost accidentally. But the reason why they decided to name themselves Black Sabbath is because they saw this movie and they were like, hey, people really, like, they are paying money to be scared. Like, we should do this for ourselves. And like Black Sabbath is one of my top 3 favorite bands of all time.
I like that you're saying that as a guy wearing an Iron Maiden shirt.
Yeah, I do have a Black Sabbath shirt. I'm not wearing it at the time. I didn't plan that. But yeah, it's like it was one of the first movies that came out that like people really started realizing like, okay, we've got something here. Like people are actually paying money to be scared. So it really like it was revolutionary in so many different ways. And musically, heavy metal, like the greatest love of my life, because of this movie.
Yeah. What about you, Jack? Yeah. So Jackie, let's just go ahead and segue into you. What did you think? 1960. What sticks out?
Rosemary's Baby.
Mm-hmm. Oh man.
I mean,
figured somebody was going to say that. Yep.
I mean, I knew I was being a little stereotypical on it, but
it's a classic. I mean, what do you want?
Like, I mean, let me just say, hail Satan. Like,
topical.
His eyes. What happened to his eyes?
Like, and I mean, I'm not even gonna fucking say spoiler alert because you've had enough time to watch it. If you haven't watched it.
That's our motto. That's our mantra. You haven't seen it yet? Fuck yourself.
If you haven't seen it yet.
But I mean, honestly, with her at the end, and they're like, "Oh yeah, you actually did get raped by Satan," and you still care about your baby. It's like it's crying, and it's obviously Satan's baby, and the fact that she goes and rocks it at the end after she's been like stressed out the entire fucking movie, and you're like, "Oh my god!" And then all the backstory. I mean, I'm a huge true crime nerd, of course. And with all the backstory with them and everything, and just like this movie as a whole, it's fucking beautiful. And so many other films have, kind of taken from it. There's one I'm thinking of in particular right now, and I can't name it. It's pissing me off, but, just the fact that it's like, a guy sells his soul to become famous, or not sells his soul, sells his fucking firstborn. And the fact that woman is just loves her baby so much that she's like, well, I guess I'd have a Satan baby.
Oh, well.
Oh, well.
Satan baby time. Not a problem. I'm not gonna lie. I've never
superpowers make him cool.
Yeah, that's probably what they were worried about.
I mean, that's what I would.
Maybe. I honestly, I've never been a fan of Rosemary's Baby, personally, but that's.
You're wrong, but that's fine.
It's okay for me to be wrong, right? Fine. It's okay for Johnny to be incorrect.
As long as we all say fuck Roman Polanski.
Yeah
for that. Yeah, fuck Roman Polanski. Jacob, what about you, man? What was your what do you think was your favorite for the 60s? Iconic, whatever.
Oh, come on. It's George Romero's Night of the Living Dead.
I mean, there's no question about it.
I knew somebody was going to do that.
Yeah. Are you guys fucking kidding me?
That's a good one.
It's easily one of my favorite of all time. It also spawned numerous sequels. It also created the zombie genre.
Yeah.
One of the few movies where the hero is a black man, especially during that time. And it also ends on a fucking downer. But it's also very politically in tune with today. It's fairly very relevant to this day, in fact. But also just like the fact that movie, like it came out in 1968. It's still black and white, but it still manages to get under my skin a lot of the times. I mean, just the opening shot alone, like the opening scene alone at the cemetery, and then the boyfriend's just like, they're coming to get you, Barbara, and the thunder starts clapping, and
that's one of the most affordable things ever.
Yeah.
And then the first zombie is slowly making his way to her, and then she can't get the car running because her boyfriend has the keys, who is just like knocked dead on that stone. Obviously, it's not the movie that sort of made Return of the Living Dead made the whole like zombies eat brain popular. This movie was basically just like they'll eat anything.
Yeah, it wasn't just the brains. Yeah.
Yeah, but also just it kind of jump started. Also, is like, God, we gotta hide out in this fucking house. We gotta board it up. But it turns out the dead is already in here with us. That kind of stuff. But yeah, it jump started a whole entire genre, and I still think it maintains its creepiness to this day. Like there are times where I can watch the opening scene and I'm just like, I get goosebumps.
Yeah, it doesn't
like
really.
Even thinking about it, I get goosebumps.
Well. Yeah, it aged well. It really did. Yeah, even with the zombie craze, still one of the top ones.
Yeah, it's still my favorite of Romero's films for sure. Like I really love Land of the Dead a lot because it's just so cheesy.
Yeah.
And of course his Dawn of the Dead is great, but yeah, Night of the Living Dead will always remain my favorite of Romero's.
Yeah, Gary, what about you, man? 60s, most iconic.
Mine is 1 million years BC. It's 1961 Raquel Welch. I liked it because of the claymation.
Really?
Yeah.
I was thinking of Land That Time Forgot.
I'm just shocked that Gary picked this. Go ahead, Gary. Please keep going. I'm interested to hear this.
Well, like, Claymation's really creepy to me.
It's true. It is. It is. Wallace and Drama used to freak me the fuck out.
There's a movie on Shudder you should watch called Mad God.
But yeah, like the dinosaurs are big. The dinosaurs are big, terrifying monsters that humans with their little sticks and stones have to try and defeat in order to just survive in the world that they live. I thought that was kind of an extravagant and neat way to kind of show that. Like,
yeah.
Did you see this movie when you were a kid? And if so, did it scare you?
I mean, like, the dinosaurs are kind of scary. Like, are you saying that you weren't scared by it, Ian?
No, I'm asking you your personal opinion and why you picked it.
Well, I figured everybody was going to pick like Night of the Living Dead and like Rosemary's Baby. So I kind of wanted to have kind of a different. I didn't know about that one, but I wanted to kind of have a different opinion than everyone else.
I'm not disagreeing. I'm just wondering why you went that, because it's such an obscure angle. Like, I agree with you. It is.
Well, he was explaining that after he picked it.
Yeah.
I mean, okay. Well, thanks for Gary. Thanks for picking that one, because that just gives me fucking Psycho. So thanks a lot. I appreciate it.
Yeah. You're welcome.
I'll be the fucking pumpkin spice generic bitch. I don't give a shit. Fine. Psycho is. You want to talk about the great? Hang on. You're right. It is fucking great. You talk about the beginning of this. You want to talk about the beginning of slasher and suspense thrillers. You talk about the beginning of the 60s. You talk about Hitchcock. You talk about his magnum opus. I mean, I can talk about The Birds and Rear Window and a bunch of other fantastic work that he's done, but I mean, Psycho is his most iconic, and it is for good reason, because it was the best horror of the 60s. Huh?
It has a toilet.
It does have a toilet. It has a toilet scene,
It has a drain.
It has a drain.
I mean, honestly, I think people would hate you if you didn't bring up Psycho.
Oh yeah, we would have gotten tons of angry letters from our fans. They would be like, "We're gonna stop listening." If we had any. No, I make that joke all the time, but we're one of the most popular podcasts on Apple. So,
we're number 3.
Yeah, number 3 for this subgenre of horror podcast.
Joe Rogan.
This Joe Rogan podcast.
One year ago, you had me on here. I said Psycho was like my favorite horror movie of all time.
Good pick.
Yeah. It's amazing.
It is amazing,
especially like I don't know if I've gone on this podcast to say it, but I've definitely said it on my podcast. For fun, sometimes I like to watch YouTube videos of people
reaction videos. Yes, you brought that up.
And a lot of them are Psycho, and like these are people who've seen the scariest movies of all time, and they've never seen Psycho, and they do, and they still just like it scares the shit out of them. It's like,
sure,
especially like like the guy the cop, he goes into the house, he's looking around, he's scoping, and something's about to happen, and it gets quiet, and then all you hear beep, 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 and then just like all of a sudden this person is just walking straight towards him and just stabs him, and like you see it coming, but it's like, oh my god, it's like it's too fast for you to even react.
Nobody conducts a suspenseful scene like Alfred Hitchcock. I mean, as much as I talk about, I gush over James Wan being, this generation's Hitchcock. I'll say that all day long. But Hitchcock was the OG, so that's what it is. Jacob, you made an interesting face. Why is that? Go ahead, please. By all means.
James Wan being a
but I've said that for years.
Hitchcock.
This is not the first time you've heard me say that. I've said that a ton.
I know, but I don't agree with it. Oh, I don't agree with that at all.
Okay, don't agree with it then. I mean, this coming from the guy that thinks Ari Aster is supposed to be the next best thing. I mean, have you seen Midsommar?
Oh, he's great. Oh, I would say Jordan Peele is more Hitchcockian than even Ari Aster.
No.
Yeah.
Absolutely not.
Yeah.
No, one came before both of them. He's what?
Huh?
He's all supernatural. No, I mean, In some of his, Saw was a torture porn film. He created the concept.
But
he
how is
wrote
that
the
movie
script.
Hitchcock?
I didn't say that was
Hitchcock.
You just said James. Yeah,
you're saying he's the modern
You just
Hitchcock.
said James. I'm trying to explain it. You just said James Wan was paranormal, and I'm like, no, he's not. He's done plenty of other things outside of supernatural and paranormal.
Yeah. Saw and Fast and Furious. Yes. The most Hitchcockian of movies.
Okay. Okay, like Insidious and I'm just gonna say Insidious and The Conjuring by themselves. You know, I'm not even gonna talk about how much I actually. Dead Silence is a shitty fucking film, but I fucking enjoyed it.
Well,
I thought it was
Malignant. Don't forget Malignant.
Malignant was actually the second half of that was
aren't Hitchcockian. I wouldn't consider any of those Hitchcockian.
But I would consider the Conjuring and Insidious franchises to both be Hitchcockian. At least the first one in both. Go ahead, Jackie.
I agree. It's a setup. It's the slow.
It is a setup.
They're just poltergeists. They're just less effect heavy poltergeists.
No, they're not. Poltergeist is completely. How are you even putting Poltergeist and Hitchcock in the same sentence? You kidding me?
No. I'm talking about Insidious and even The Conjuring. They're just haunted house movies.
No, they're not.
No, Insidious is not a haunted house movie.
It is most certainly not a haunted
house movie. It's only a haunted house movie.
Okay, so is the Amityville Horror. So what?
It doesn't involve a house which is haunted.
Yeah. Well, they think the house is haunted. Hitchcock built up the suspense slowly by frame, and you know this. He builds it up. Instead of most directors who go to your suspenseful scene, they're going to have maybe 5 or 6 cuts. Hitchcock had usually 12 to 15, and they were all slow moving. Wan does the exact same thing. That's a staple of Hitchcock, and I'm not saying Wan came up with it. He stole it from Hitchcock. He absolutely did. You know, but the reason I love Wan so much is because he doesn't rely on he relies on his own soundtrack and special effects to scare the shit out of you. He doesn't show you everything immediately, which Hitchcock didn't show you it immediately. You see it eventually. I'm not saying you don't see it, but he builds up to it. He like Carpenter actually too. He does build up for a good half, 3/4 of the movie before you finally see the beast. And that's what I love about him. That's why I always think it's Hitchcocky, if you will.
I get you. I don't agree, but I understand. I love that opinion.
Okay. Anyways,
we can agree to disagree.
We can agree to disagree.
Yeah, agree to disagree.
For time's sake, let's move on to the 70s here because we are running out of time and there's a lot to cover. Gary, let's start with you. What do you think was the most iconic or memorable coming from the 70s?
For me, The Exorcist, in terms of like a horror kind of thing.
Basic bitch, Gary.
Yeah, I mean,
basic bitch.
The Exorcist, I think, contains a lot of those elements of like, it's really like slow. It's really slow story, and then like it just kind of has those punctuated moments where the demonic forces start to take over, and it's sort of the eternal struggle between good and evil. And then I also like that it makes both the young priest and the old priest kind of debate with themselves over like what is the nature of good and evil, of God and Satan, and it's just to me a really a well done movie in that regard. Okay.
Ian, how about you? Now that we've come out of the gothic and Hitchcock thrillers into the 70s, we've gone into more of the classic modern slashers kind of stuff. What do you think? What kind of pops up to you?
I'm going to go left field again with another culty thing. A little bit more, I guess, kind of campy, but it is definitely fun, but still scary. One of the greatest, I guess, horror actors of all time, Christopher Lee. He did 10 or 11 Dracula films.
Fuck yeah.
And
all in the 70s?
I think he was great as Dracula. The Hammer films. He started actually in the late 50s and went up to like the late 70s, maybe early 80s. He did like a ton of Dracula films. So I mean, I could say all of them, but specifically, I mean, one I really enjoy is called Dracula AD 1972, which is the same year it came out, 1972. He's actually reincarnated, or not reincarnated. He's brought back to life by a bunch of satanic hippies, which in itself in the 70s is so terrifying. You got hippies doing satanic shit and partying, and there's an entire scene where there's a rock concert and they're having sex. Oh my god, it's so scary. But and so it's a whole like. I mean, yeah, this is a time when, like, everybody was so afraid of hippies. So, like, this movie specifically has that. And they go from a rock concert to, like, doing a satanic ritual.
Yeah.
and they bring Dracula back to life, and Christopher Lee is terrified. He has his bloodshot eyes, like in all of his films. His eyes are red, and he's really scary. And I mean, there's a bunch of them, but this is just one in particular. I mean, they're kind of dumb. They're really campy, but they're really fun, but they are scary. So yeah, I like the Hammer Dracula films, and if you want to see one in particular, 1972 is a really good one. There's also like Satanic Rites of Dracula. There's Bram Stoker's version that Christopher Lee himself has done, but yeah.
Jacob, how about you?
Oh, I mean, oh god. Well, this might be obvious, but Jaws. It's my all-time favorite film. Also, probably the most influential horror film. I mean, also there's the debate of whether or not it's a horror movie versus, a thriller. And it's like, to me, it's a horror movie. It made an entire generation, even ongoing generations, afraid of the water. That to me kind of tells you that it's a fucking horror movie. Just everything, because I actually really enjoy Spielberg's first film, Duel. It's literally just Jaws, but with a truck. But Jaws in itself, like Gary was saying, is like it's what you can't see that's terrifying. I still love the effect of Bruce to this day towards the later part of the film when Brody's throwing out the chum. And then, of course, you get the come on down, throw some of this shit. And then you're going to need a bigger boat. Like when the shark appears, it's like, obviously it's not fake. Even as a kid, I was like, that doesn't look that cool. But everything else within that film is absolutely terrifying. Like being pulled underwater by something you can't see, you can't know. The fear of the unknown, it's always there. Even when the two guys are trying to hook Jaws and they throw out the meat and he rips the pier off and he's dragging the pier with him, and you have John Williams' score going, just simple few notes, dun 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 dun. Like it still freaks me out to this day. I don't even go in the fucking ocean. I mean, I go in the ocean, but not even more than like maybe 20 feet. I don't fuck with that.
We can't see what's out there. I don't blame you.
Yeah, but also like kind of going back to Godzilla, it's like the respect. Like I love sharks, love them. I want to go cage diving with great whites so bad. I absolutely respect them, but I also know to fear them because they're not your friends. They're animals. Like you don't fuck with nature. That's kind of always my thing, and that's why I always loved Godzilla, Jaws, Hitchcock's The Birds. It was just like, yeah, man's not in control. And also to this day, like it's still hailed as one of the greatest movies ever made, and probably to me might still be Spielberg's best movie. Obviously, he's made like a ton of influential movies since then. Indiana Jones and whatnot.
According to our episode, he is the greatest director ever. According to Gary.
According to this episode, he's the greatest director ever.
Scorsese, but that's okay.
We can all agree that Tarantino is number 2, though, right?
Let's say Scorsese is the most.
Tarantino's number 2.
I think Scorsese is a better director, but he's the most consistent. I don't think Spielberg's made a good movie since
2000.
Yeah.
Munich?
Maybe.
Munich was really good. Yeah, Munich was fucking good.
There's been many episodes on this podcast where we've all been like
talk about Spielberg.
Spielberg after 2000.
Yeah. So in the 70s, so really quick, do you guys think do you think this is the beginning? It's fair to say this is the beginning of the horror blockbusters. Now that we've seen Jaws, now that we've seen Halloween, now that we've
Jaws
seen
is the first blockbuster. Yeah,
sure.
But they didn't become very popular. It's the beginning, but they didn't become popular until much later.
Right.
Jaws was pretty. Jaws broke so many box office records.
Yeah, no, I'm not disagreeing. What I said.
I think it comes back to the argument. There are people who don't view it as a horror movie.
But it didn't become popular until much later.
What? No. Jaws was like.
I would say
the point of the blockbuster is like people are landing
70s.
outside the movie, but for horror specifically.
Yeah, that's what I said. I think you're miscarrying what I'm saying.
Yeah.
Yes.
I just know you better not be shit talking Jaws, boy.
Jaws and the 1970s are the beginning of the blockbuster horror, but it's the beginning, but it didn't become, the genre didn't become popular until much later. Because there's a few here
broad
and there.
Appeal until the 80s. I see what you're saying. Okay.
What do you think the first blockbuster horror movie is? Jaws.
Jaws.
No. Take Jaws out of it, because there's that whole skew of people who are like, Jaws is not a horror movie. Jaws is a horror movie. Well, so think about it in the terms of Halloween.
Probably going back to Psycho.
I think that Jaws is a horror movie, though. That's what I don't understand.
I agree that Jaws is a horror movie.
I've gotten arguments with tons of people who don't think Jaws is a horror movie.
Well,
there's a whole bunch of people out there who don't think monsters classify as a horror.
Yeah.
It's just a Spielberg film. He's his own genre.
But take that out. Take out Jaws. What do you think is probably the first blockbuster movie, horror specifically?
Maybe like.
Would it be Halloween?
I don't know.
Say Halloween, which is my
when it came out. That's the first slasher.
Right. Yeah, first slasher for sure.
Besides Black Christmas.
That's what I was just about to say.
Okay, all right. Yeah.
That's the movie that I almost picked.
I like Black Christmas way more than Halloween.
I've never seen Black Christmas.
With you.
Yeah.
Yes. Because I don't think Halloween holds up.
Almost picked it.
I don't think Halloween holds up. Like I recently watched both in theaters. I watched Halloween 1 and Black Christmas. Black Christmas still freaks me out to this day. Halloween.
Halloween never really freaked me out.
But Black Christmas, so much creepier.
Yeah. And also, I think it's a way more grounded. There's too many like ass shots in fucking Halloween and just like a lot of like dawdling, where Black Christmas just gets straight to the point. It's just like, ugh.
I agree with you.
Creep factor.
Also, it pulls, like I said, that was almost my pick. It pulls through, I wish I would have picked it now. It just pulls through, the whole babysitter thing, the whole, bunch of girls hanging out alone thing. Then it's got like one of the most badass final girls ever. Like,
very true.
Black Christmas is incredible.
I'll have to check it out. I mean, you guys talk about it all the time. I've still never seen it. Yeah,
it's terrifying, mostly because it's like there's in that movie. There's rarely a time where they really split up. They're kind of all together, especially in the beginning when they're huddled around the phone. And it's like it's very rare that you can be kind of creeped out when you're surrounded by people who where you feel protected. It's kind of like why I like Midsommar, because it's like in the fucking daylight. It's like the daylight's supposed to protect you, but
it's a cool concept.
I totally agree with you. Definitely, that movie is fucking beautiful.
Yeah, you're not. I mean, any Ari Aster is beautifully shot. You're not going to give. I'm not going to say anything different to that. That was my problem.
I mean, I'm saying the writing, directing, script, and like acting, everything about it, and it's not super campy like a lot of early 80s slasher films or 70s. Late 70s slasher films, because they didn't come out until then. But, it doesn't have that, like, kind of cheesy aspect to it. It really doesn't.
Yeah, it keeps it pretty serious, and it's not really ironic.
Yeah, which I don't understand. Because
and then, like, I've never seen a scene where it was so tense where they're trying to trace a phone call, right? Because that was back when they had like the switches and whatnot. It's like, we gotta fucking find out which switch, where this guy's coming from, and it's like, that's scary.
It's so good. Oh, I love that movie.
So speaking of,
I'm talking about Jaws, but now I'm talking about Black Christmas. But yeah.
So speaking of, but it's fine because speaking of those slasher movies and whatnot, that kind of gives us a good segue into the 80s, which really were the boom for horror blockbusters and the popularity of the franchise. It may not have been at its peak, but it definitely was getting there. And Halloween is a good segue into that. But Jacob, what about? Actually, excuse me. No, we'll start with Jackie because she didn't get to go first last time. So Jackie, in the 80s, what do you think was the most iconic, your favorite, most memorable?
Oh, I did not choose my favorite, most memorable.
Oh, in the 70s? Oh, I thought you were agreeing with Black Christmas. Please go ahead then.
Well, no,
sorry.
I chose something else in the 70s, but I'll get right into the 80s because I got a lot of.
Sorry to interject, but Exorcist did make $450 million in 1973.
Yeah,
I mean, it's probably ongoing
big
since then. But it's pretty huge whenever.
Yeah,
Exorcist
that is. I mean,
out.
Jaws was what? What did you say it was? It was 71?
75.
75? Okay,
yeah,
so
and Jaws made more than Exorcist, but still.
Yeah. Exorcist
well,
made a ton,
I do appreciate you fact checking because now I feel. Well, I don't care. I'll say what I think is best. So.
Well, I just wanted to be sure because I was like, what was the biggest horror movie outside of Jaws? Like specifically horror. Yeah.
Jackie, please go ahead.
So I'm obsessed with 80s horror films. I cannot pick a favorite. I can't tell you the best. I will tell you that eventually when I have enough money, both of my legs are going to be tattooed with horror movies from the 80s.
Perfect.
Like, I'm completely and utterly obsessed. I chose a movie to talk about that I thought nobody would talk about. Because, of course, I wanted to talk about Nightmare on Elm Street. I wanted to talk about Chucky. I wanted to talk about, all of those movies. I chose Society.
Oh, shit.
Fuck yeah.
Ian pick. That's an Ian pick. All right.
That is very much
we got some competition, man. With obscure pick possible. All right, I love it.
Shunting or whatever still haunts my dreams.
Never seen it.
Okay. I'm not going to lie. I got introduced to this movie from Joe Bob Briggs.
Okay.
Mm-hmm.
Because I'm utterly, he is my second favorite celebrity. But
we get the Halloween episode on Friday.
Oh,
please don't talk about other podcasts while you're on this podcast. Thank you.
Yeah, keep it yourself, Jacob.
That's all right.
You apologize.
Well, I was talking about Joe Bob. I was talking about Joe Bob specifically, like his Halloween episodes on Friday. But I will, yeah.
Does he have a podcast?
Joe Bob. I might have misconstrued that.
You don't know Joe Bob?
I've never heard of Joe Bob. I've heard of Billy Bob Thornton.
Oh man,
almost the same.
I'm out.
Okay.
Joe Bob Briggs used to host, kind of like Elvira would host, like the TNT movie nights and whatnot. I didn't get into him until a few years ago when I was just like searching Scudder, and I was like, why does this guy look familiar? And then like, bam, I started watching his shit, and I was like, oh, this is the guy who was on like TNT and stuff.
A Monster Vision.
And I've been watching him ever since, and he's a ton of fun because he's got so much knowledge about horror movies.
So let's talk about Society.
Yes, Society. We're Jonny.
I wrote down exactly what the IMDb had a summary about it, which made me very happy. It says an ordinary teen boy discovers his family is part of a gruesome orgy cult for the social elite. Then I wrote butthead and shunting.
Yeah, exactly. Okay, that'll do it. Yeah.
Don't forget the anal fisting.
Oh yeah, that too.
I definitely plan to cover that show on my podcast, Cold and Trash. Absolutely. At some point, I will. I'll probably invite you.
I would love to be on that episode.
Yeah, same.
Sure.
Anything you guys know involved in.
My boyfriend and I had been dating for a week, and I showed him society. And I'm pretty sure that was
it's like
the
ride
night
or
that
die at that point.
I'm pretty sure that was the night he told me that he was in love with me.
Oh, nice. That's a good filter. It's like will you roll with me after this?
Exactly.
This
Yeah.
is it. Like, yeah, it's like if you don't like this, then like this is a good way to determine.
I don't think we're really get along for a while.
Oh yeah. My girlfriend, whenever we started dating, she nonchalantly mentioned that she watched Go Bob Riggs, and it was like, "You're the one."
I do the same thing with not horror movies, but with The Room. Like I bring every potential girlfriend to the Room test.
Honestly, I think The Room is terrible, but it's hard to sit through that movie if you're not on something.
I've seen it in the theater 15 times.
Well,
wow.
I mean, you got a crowd there, but...
Okay.
Johnny just come with me 3 of those times. Yeah.
Those movie parties are great.
No, but I just honestly, I can't even.
Johnny.
Nope.
I don't want to even describe the movie because I just want to tell people there's point in saying anything about society. Just
it's a very jarring it's because when I first saw it, it was sprung on me by a friend of mine. Like he just sat me down and we're gonna watch a movie, and the first 20 or 30 minutes I was like, what the fuck is this shit? Like, this is kind of stupid. And then as it went on, I was like, okay, cool, and then it comes to that part, and if you see the movie you know what I mean by that part, and I'm like, what? Okay, this movie's great.
I already said the shunting.
Yeah.
Nobody's gonna know what it is unless you've seen the movie.
Yeah.
I never heard it.
And those who haven't, we can all agree that they're a real butthead.
They're a real butthead.
Bunch of buttheads.
The special effects are just so good too.
It's so great.
Really? Yeah.
So Ian, was that your pick too, Ian? Oh, he might be having a technical problem.
Sorry, what?
Ian? I was asking what your pick was.
My headphones I accidentally hit the cord of my headphones and they fell out, so I didn't hear anything. What my pick is, let's see, let me look at my notes. Hammer Dracula. If you've ever seen Dracula, no. Evil Dead for sure.
Yeah. So yep. You got it right there, Jackie? Yep, she's pointing to it. She's got one.
Yep.
Got another one added to the mural.
Got a full ass Evil Dead sleeve.
Even if you don't like horror movies, you will after watching this movie.
100%.
Because a lot of people who don't like horror movies, they don't like it because maybe they don't like blood and gore, or they don't like being scared or whatever.
It does have tree rape.
It does have. That'll get you.
Yeah.
No, it's so creative though. I mean, yeah, when have you seen tree rape? I mean, yeah, that's a good point.
Okay, but what's your feelings about 1 and 2?
I like the first one better, to be honest.
I agree, thank you.
I grew up on the second one. I saw the second one first, and I loved the second one. The second one is if you know me and my podcast and my previous podcast at that, I really loved So Bad It's Good genre or whatever, and that's what 2 is. And then Army of Darkness kind of, but it's super self-aware. But I really love the low budget, it's so low budget that it becomes cheesy, and you're okay, it's almost like a cartoon now. I understand that this is not real, and it's kind of funny how bad it is, but Evil Dead is different, in which case it is that, but it's also so creative, and I
100% agree with you.
Yeah, and then the story itself and the script is there's nothing like it. That itself is so creative, and it's inspired so much. And the YouTube channel that my show is on, there's many shows on Infamous Horror. Mine is one of them. All started from Evil Dead. So like if Evil Dead didn't exist, like I'd be on like something else. And,
I would have a different tattoo. I mean,
yeah, you would be a whole different sleeve. Yeah.
I mean, it is funny. Like, yeah, those words are, yeah, but I mean, for real though. I mean, it's so like its own lane. It's so like it inspired like everything that came after it, but it's also like it's so much different from like all the slashers, all the like haunted house movies. I mean, it is a haunted house movie, but it's like so much different from all the other ones.
Yeah, it's almost satirical in ways, honestly. Like it is. Yeah, I mean,
it has fun with itself in the second one. Like
it doesn't take itself too seriously.
We'll just do it again, but like we'll just have much more fun with it.
It's such inventive hauntings too. Like the scene where they like, I mean, the girl basically almost gets raped by the tree, or does, I guess. I mean, like
almost,
that's just,
she does.
Who would have thought? Like, where did that come out of Sam Raimi's head? Like, where the hell did that come? It's just so random. I'm just like, this is for this time period too.
What I was going to say is Sam Raimi is just so insane. He's a genius.
Yeah.
Love him.
Yeah.
Except for The Great and Powerful Oz. That was pretty trash.
God. That was the best movie. What, are you kidding me? It was great. Mila Kunis, come on.
Oh, man.
James Franco.
Or Doctor Strange.
No.
Doctor Strange was okay. That felt like a return to form.
I like his horror movies.
I liked his Doctor Strange, honestly. I enjoyed
it. I didn't think it was bad.
I liked the Spider-Man. You know,
it was mostly just like the treatment of Scarlet Witch. I thought was pretty bad.
Gary, what about you? What kind of pumped into the 80s for you?
For me, the number one 80s movie is for horror is probably going to be American Werewolf in London.
Okay, that's
came out. It came out in 1981, and it probably to this day still has the best transformation scene of any movie where the kid turns into a werewolf.
But Howling, but
Howling is pretty good.
But
nowhere near the quality.
American Werewolf in London is really
and
good.
Just
really,
basically
really good.
Two Americans that are over in England and they're on like they're college kids, and then they get attacked on these dark moors, and one of the friend dies, and he comes back as like a ghost to haunt him, and like kind of walks him through how to like what's going on as he's turning into a werewolf and killing people in Piccadilly Circus and the London Underground, and just a fantastic movie.
It's a brutal film. Love it. Jacob, how about you?
It plays with the werewolf lore like super well, and then also the sort of black comedy aspect, especially when his friend is dead and just giving him shit from beyond the grave.
Yeah,
it's also crazy to think this is kind of around because like this is from the director of Animal House, so it's kind of cool that this guy would make one of the most influential horror movies ever made.
Yeah.
You know?
Yeah.
And how it begins, the movie starts out with the Nazi werewolf guys. Like that itself is just such a treat.
Yeah. Guys, I'm sorry. We are getting really low on time here. So what we're going to do is I'm going to let the three of you, let's keep our answers a little shorter. I'm going to keep the three of you guys to picks in the 90s, and we're going to combine the 2000s and 2010s into one. So just pick which one you thought was more influential between your two picks for that era. But anyways, Jacob, by all means, go ahead with your pick.
For which decade? Sorry.
For the 80s still.
Oh, well, I figured like The Thing and The Fly would probably those are usually like I usually won't shut the I usually won't shut the fuck up about those movies. So third pick was James Cameron's Aliens. Without it, I think we wouldn't have the bridge of action meeting horror in the same way.
That's true.
It's
really true, actually.
The first movie that really bridged action horror together, and then also gave us some of the most like influential action scenes, as well as like probably the greatest heroine in all of horror, Ellen Ripley. Though Alien, you know, kind of gave it to us first, like, but having Ripley like stand tall amongst all these like badass Marines, like, just made her even cooler. And the fact that she would brave going into the Queen's Nest to find Newt just makes her one of the most badass action heroes probably ever. Especially since she had never even handled like the weapons she had basically duct taped together before, like pulse rifle and the flamethrower. Like, she was like, "Fuck that! I don't care. I'm gonna go save Newt." And also, it's so influential, the fact that like almost every video game and any sort of militarized sci-fi movie has tried to emulate since. You know, Halo wouldn't exist without aliens. So.
Yeah. I think all of these are so good, and I think for me at least, and you brought up The Thing, and I always talk about They Live might be secretly my most favorite and underrated John Carpenter film. You got it right there.
I was gonna talk about They Live.
Oh my God! Well, good thing I brought it up then. And the same thing, Jacob. I've gotten into arguments with people too on. You talk about Jaws. They Live for me. A lot of people would just like, it's a satirical sci-fi, and I'm like, I mean, it is, but it's still a horror film. It's still creepy. It scares the crap out of you to think about this could be a real thing. Like that only a handful of people are controlling the fate of billions, you know? And so, you know, they touch on it in Repo Man, and they do that in kind of a comedic, you know, Ian, I know you love that film. And it just, they do it. And it parodies a lot of those really well. Nice. But I would say, as far as when I think of the 80s, I think of gory, splatterfest, campy, violence and comedy. I'm gonna have to go with Nightmare on Elm Street, man. Honestly, I think that it's just so it's a good mix of scary, gore, and goofy. Honestly, it's one of the ones that I always watch it every October. It's one I introduced it to my sister last year. She's Generation Z, much younger than us. She's early 20s, and so she hadn't seen a lot of them. That was the second one I showed her behind The Thing, actually, and then a bunch of others. But I'd say, as far as just I'm most memorable, it would be that for me, because all 80s horror movies in my mind, normally, like for the general mass audiences, think of it as campy gore fest films, slashers, you know. And I just thought that encapsulated that thought process very, very well. So let's jump into the night. Go ahead.
I said I 100% agree with you.
Oh yeah, man. I agree with you, Jackie. The 80s were by far, and I think most of us probably are all going to say that the 80s were our favorite decade for horror films in general. Of
course, yeah.
It's too easy. It's too easy to pick. The 90s, though, we started to see. We started to see kind of this downward trend in the early mid 90s with horror gross profits, until I'm sure one of you is going to pick this classic mid 90s horror film. Jacob, I'm gonna let you start on this one since you went last on the last one. What's your favorite?
It's not gonna be what you think.
Okay. I thought you were gonna pick this one, but go ahead. What's your other one?
Yeah, if you're gonna say Scream, I was actually I was gonna pick Wes Craven's New Nightmare. It's a progenitor to Scream. Kind of bouncing off of your Nightmare on Elm Street. Like, it's Freddy Krueger will always remain my favorite slasher.
Right.
I love his entire franchise. I will say, like, Chucky actually has the most cohesive, because not a single one of those movies is a reboot, except the actual reboot that Don Mancini was not even involved in.
That was the whole thing.
Well, no. So Don Mancini wasn't involved in that. That was a whole rights issue. But Don Mancini has maintained the same storyline since, from Child's Play going all the way to the new Chucky series. And I maintain that Chucky, besides Scream, is probably the most cohesive storyline of horror movies. And I think the Chucky series is fucking fantastic. I think it's probably the best horror thing out there right now.
I haven't done the chance.
It's so good. But kind of going back to New Nightmare, it was the progenitor to Scream in that it was very meta. Like, it basically took Freddy Krueger and took him out of the movie and placed him into our reality. So Heather Langenkamp is playing herself, not Nancy Thompson. I think it's Nancy Thompson from Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3. She's playing herself, and it also deals with real world shit that happened. So like after Nightmare on Elm Street 1 and 3 came out, where Heather Langenkamp starred in, she had a stalker. So Wes Craven incorporates that into the film itself, where she's being stalked by somebody within the movie, like getting creepy phone calls. In the film, it's Freddy Krueger, but is Freddy Krueger actually Robert Englund? Robert Englund plays himself in the movie. Basically, all the actors from the first Nightmare on Elm Street play themselves. And the whole movie's a meta take on Freddy Krueger in the Nightmare on Elm Street franchise. And I think it's, without it, I guess also that and Last Action Hero, because I fucking love that Last Action Hero. We wouldn't have sort of the meta takes we have on horror films we have right now. Like, I don't think Cabin in the Woods would exist without New Nightmare. Scream sure as shit wouldn't exist without New Nightmare.
At all.
Yeah. Absolutely not.
Scary movie.
And it was cool to see. Yeah, it was cool to see that kind of take. Like, I think it grossed the least out of all the Nightmare on Elm Street films, but I think it might be the most interesting and probably the coolest of them. Dream Warriors will always remain my favorite, but I think New Nightmare is probably one of the best horror movies ever made.
That's the one that, like, everybody I know who's a fan of the franchise, they're like, I love this movie.
Yeah.
It's so good.
Yeah, it's fantastic. And then turning Freddy Krueger not into a person, but into a force of nature, very much like Jaws or Godzilla. Guys, there's a theme here. I'm going with it. These things are monsters. They're not monsters. Human.
You love nature versus man. We got you.
Yeah, man.
Non-humans are
man. Mother Nature's the bomb, baby. Come on.
But yeah, that's the whole point of the movie is like Freddy Krueger is just an entity and not an actual person.
Okay.
And I love a lot of the themes in that movie, and then even Wes Craven playing himself, and he's like literally writing a script within the same movie he's fucking directing is so batshit crazy. It's just like, man, I can't believe nobody had tried to do this before. And then it's awesome to see all these movies try to do it since, you know?
Yeah. Ian, how about you?
I'm going to go back into the realm of me having a one, like, me thinking along the same path as I'm not. So we talked about this character many times throughout this episode, because anyway, not so much the most influential, definitely not the most influential of the 90s, but definitely most influential character of them all, of horror in general. I remember when I was a kid, the first R-rated movie I ever saw happened to be this movie, and it's a horror movie. And my dad just like, he was like, all right, I'm going to show you your first R-rated movie. And it was Bram Stoker's Dracula.
Hell yeah.
Nice. And so we're gonna keep Dracula going. That Jacob, you were right. There is a theme of tonight, and it's Dracula.
It's Dracula and monsters. Dracula and monsters.
And Keanu's British accent.
Are we gonna still talk about that we all find hot, even though y'all are straight?
Oh, Gary Oldman, talking about a smoke show, baby.
Dude,
come on,
Gary Oldman, even in old man makeup. But honestly, doesn't hold a candle to Leslie Nielsen in Dracula Dead and Loving It. Really.
Dead and Loving It.
Oh, come on.
That's Eddie Murphy.
That's just like the extent. That's Dracula Dead and Loving It is the like Snyder cut to Dracula.
I'm sorry, but Senor Gary, he is a smoke show and a half in that movie.
Smoke show and a half, baby.
And like, who can forget the classic line like, I've seen strange things so far. You mean I've been chased by a bunch of wolves through a blue fiery inferno?
Yeah, Keanu Reeves accent and Winona Ryder.
I forgot.
It's so bad.
Oh man, I love that movie, but fuck.
Yeah, and then let's not forget Anthony Hopkins too. I mean, he was
full of stellar. I mean, him and Winona. Yeah, there is full of amazing actors outside of Keanu Reeves in that film. Don't get me wrong.
I love how you said outside of Keanu Reeves.
Yeah, outside of Keanu Reeves. He's good in some movies, not in that one.
I mean, even Winona Ryder is pretty bad in that movie. Let's not try to sugarcoat it.
But how is that movie so good with
Jonathan.
everyone not acting well except for Gary Oldman and Gary Oldman?
It's insane. Like Francis Ford Coppola is probably one of the greatest directors, and the fact that movie is so practical, and the fact that he's using, like, in the opening shot when the red dragon is, like Vlad Tempest Dracula is literally impaling people. He's doing it in the old style of like stick figures walking in the background, and it's so cool. And he's using so many old school filming techniques, but then you have fucking Keanu Reeves as Jonathan Harker, and it's like, oh man, what the fuck are we doing?
Well, why is the movie so good?
Gary Oldman.
The
costume design is absolutely insane. Yeah, the costume design itself is fucking good too.
100%.
My favorite.
And yeah, like that. I think that movie was also my first sexual.
Tom Waits. Tom Waits is pretty great.
Gary Oldman.
No, Tom Waits.
Yeah, it's crazy that Tom Waits is a better actor in that movie.
Give me that.
No.
He's like eating the cockroaches. He's like,
forgive me,
master. I have to. Oh, give me a cat for the master.
He's doing such a good job. Fuck.
Let's round this decade out with Jackie. Jackie, what was your pick?
Which decade were we on?
90s.
90s?
Yeah.
I picked Candyman.
Nice.
Ooh,
very nice.
Honestly,
be my victim. Oh my
yes,
God,
absolutely.
Creeps me out.
Odd, man.
Yeah, man.
Not only do I watch that
him,
movie, this is one of my once a month movies. I'm not gonna lie. I fall asleep to this movie.
Okay.
Like at least once a month. Like
what did you think of the remake?
Yeah, what did you think of the remake?
It's too soon for me to give things away. I'm not going to do that. I'm going to be nice about it. I was at first I was a little upset, and then I realized where they were going with it, and I was like, "Oh, all right, I'm okay with that."
Mm-hmm.
I was okay with it. Now, do I compare it to the first one? No, but I like where they went with it.
Yeah, I like
but honestly, Candyman is one of the creepiest movies I have ever seen in my entire life.
It is.
It still gets me in the guts every time I watch it. When she fucking wakes up and has no idea. I'm sorry?
I was about to mention that when she wakes up in the bathtub, right?
When she wakes up and she doesn't understand why she's covered in blood and why she's screaming and why the dog's dead, and then the cops show up and she goes like, oh my God, like I'm an empath, and so like I can feel it right now, like just talking about it. Like that is it's just one of the most horrifying things ever, just passing out and not knowing what the fuck just happened.
Yeah.
Like it's no, thank you.
And as a viewer, you don't know if she killed the baby or not in that scene.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
Yeah.
That fucked me up.
And the dog, the poor pupper, and like
handle child or animal cruelty. Yeah, that makes me
insane.
cringe. Yeah.
Fuck kids. The dogs are what's worse.
Yeah,
that's true.
I kind of feel the same way. Yeah.
I'm a little. I'm glad that nobody went with the obvious in Scream. I am a little surprised that nobody said that. To wrap it, I know,
did.
and it would have been okay because it did, as Jacob mentioned and stuff. Yeah, we wouldn't have Cabin in the Woods if it wasn't for Scream. There's a lot of films we wouldn't have if it wasn't for Scream. You know. Go ahead. What'd you say? Can't hear you. I know you're joking, but I can't hear you.
It's probably Discord. If it wasn't for New Nightmare first, or even Last Action Hero, Last Action Hero is kind of
okay. Yeah. Again, Scream was mainstream, so it made it broad appeal to everybody, I guess is what I was referring to.
Yeah.
You know, and for me, I would have just Gary and I both agreed that we would have picked that. So that's definitely one that doesn't need a full topic to talk on. Let's round us out with the 2000s and 2010s. Let's go ahead and combine the two. Gary and I will jump back in to give our selections on this one.
22 years.
But yeah. So if you have two that you really want to mention, it's fine. Go ahead. Just keep it short when you're giving a synopsis. Most likely, our audience that listens to this episode has probably seen a lot of these films, unless it's super obscure. So Ian, so let's jump in. Jackie, I'll let you start out for us. You can give us one, or if you want to give both picks, that's fine. Your most influential movies of the two of the last 22 years, 2000s and 2010s.
Okay, I didn't
or just one of them.
I was gonna say the first one, Bubba Hotep, but I'm going to skip that.
So good.
Okay. Skip that.
All right.
Because you know where I'm going. I'm going with Mandy.
I figured you and Ian would get along for that one. Why Mandy? I know you love Cage. I know you're
I am 150% obsessed with Nicolas Cage, and I believe that Mandy is one of the best horror films that's ever been made ever.
Because it is.
Yes. Yes.
Okay.
And let me the only thing that I wrote down, I can sit there and explain it. I'm not going to explain it because I'm just going to say it's a slow burn, and just to understand the relationship between Mandy and Red, because it is a slow burn, the fact that you have to understand that their relationship is so important in order to understand the second half of the movie. So shut the fuck up when you say it's boring in the beginning. All I want to say is the original first line in the script right before the beautiful metal music starts playing, which is "When I die."
Beautiful metal music. Yes.
It's so beautiful.
Yeah, lay some speakers by my feet. And,
when I die, bury me deep. Lay 2 speakers at my feet. Put some headphones around my head and rock and roll me when I'm.
Yes. Yeah. If you listen to, I've been on definitely more than half of the episodes on this podcast, and half of those episodes I mentioned Mandy.
You have, yeah. Ian's a big fan.
I can talk about Mandy for hours.
I wish I knew you before we did the Mandy episode on my podcast. We reviewed it, and that was a great episode. That was a great episode.
That was a really good episode. Yeah.
I could have gone.
Mandy, I have an unhealthy obsession with that fucking movie.
I really do as well.
Well, what do you think of Beyond the Black Rainbow?
I thought it was fine. But I think he really hit his stride with
Willy's Wonderland, yeah. I loved Willy's Wonderland.
I consider that a spiritual successor to Mandy, even though I didn't really care for it, but
yeah. Ian, how about you? But what's your opinion?
I'm gonna go completely different. So there is one movie. All right, so the 2000s, that's when everybody was like, well, we have no original ideas left.
Meta horror was over at that point, and we had just started the zombie torture. Yeah,
exactly. The 80s took all the ideas. The 90s took all the self-aware parodies.
2011.
What can we do now? Let's start some remakes. And there's one remake that really stands out, like I didn't even like watch this movie until like years after it came out, but I remember when it came out and like it was like all the buzz and everybody always talked about this movie, and it was just like, and then like this movie was so good that like it spawned the entire, let's just remake or reboot the entire franchise of every franchise that's ever existed, and that is Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Okay.
Nice.
I fucking love that reboot.
Right.
Well,
that is a really good reboot. Right, the Jessica Biel one, right?
Exactly. Yeah. Well, yeah. That, pretty much every Texas Chainsaw Massacre is a reboot. The 2003 one specifically. I remember like I didn't even see it until years after it came out, but I do remember when it came out. Everybody was fucking talking about it. It was like, yeah, it's that one like remake of that really old fucked up movie, and it is so good. And then after that, everybody did remakes. Like every franchise after that, like you just started. I really feel like this one really started them all. Maybe not the first one, but it was like so big that it was just like remakes from like here, and it also like not necessarily torture porn, but like it was kind of like on that line.
It's a mean fucking movie.
Really,
I recently rewatched it, and that movie is really mean. Like it is a dick of a movie. Like I love it, but like there's never a moment where that's so actually intense. Nice. It's like it's very intense, and just every moment it's just like, yeah, this is a fucking gruesome movie.
It started a lot of things. That movie did.
It was basically the X-Men to horror movies in a way.
I feel like Saw was probably influenced by Texas Chainsaw Massacre.
Mm-hmm.
Quite possible.
I would like gore and extreme violence.
I feel like a lot of the movies of that period, like high tension, even The Descent, it really kick-started that whole just like
two movies that I thought about talking about.
Yeah.
Those horror movies are just like they're just assholes. You know, like they're not here to like sugarcoat it. They're not here to be cheesy. They're just here to fucking give you a bad.
A lot of the movies that this movie spawned are really shitty, and we wish that they had it. But it was a very monumental for sure.
Yeah, Jacob, how about you? What do you think? 2000s and 2010s.
It would definitely be Hereditary. That was the last movie I saw in theaters that really fucked me up. I was like, I had no expectations going into it. No, fuck you. I know you don't like Hereditary.
The movie scared the shit out of me. Do you not ever listen when we argue about that?
No, I mean, I had no expectations. I hadn't heard it Ari Aster. I was just like, I just went in there because I think I had the season pass at that point. I was like, I'll fucking go watch a movie by myself in the morning. I don't care. And that movie fucked me up. I hit every single point, especially when it came down to a lot of the metaphors and even just the on the nose stuff about like hereditary mental illness and stuff like that, and all the themes it was going with. I loved all the long takes, especially during a certain segment when one main character dies close to the beginning and the camera just slowly pans in on one character who blames himself for it, is like laying on his bed, and then out of nowhere you just hear a scream from somebody, and it still fucks me up to this day. And just like everything else in that movie, the underlying witch cult, all the sort of underlying things about control, guilt, like emotional manipulation that takes place within, like, you know, a nuclear family, between your mom, between your dad. You have your heroes, you have your villains. Like that's one of the few movies where the dad is kind of the good guy and the mom is the bad guy. When in my situation growing up, dad was a bad guy, mom was a good guy. But you know, like as time changes, it's just like, okay, you're both bad guys, but mom is giving me more shit these days than I would have expected. And so that movie was kind of therapeutic in a lot of ways. I know Jonny and I disagree on the ending, but I love how balls to the wall it goes. It just like, it goes for it, and it still remains creepy. And a lot of the lore that's there about Paimon and demons and stuff. I was super into, especially when you
that is cool.
Especially when you put it next to Midsommar, because like Paimon, like Hereditary is about a king, Midsommar is about a queen, and they kind of go through the same emotional trauma. Like all these movies are about trauma. I love all that shit.
Yeah.
So Hereditary for me. Second would have been since we were kind of, I guess the Evil Dead remake was like 2011, so that was there. But yeah, that was like that was probably close, because that was the first time I was like, a fucking remake can be actually as good, if not better, than the original in some ways. I love the original Evil Dead, love it, but I actually do like the remake more. Evil Dead 2 will always remain my favorite, though.
Okay. So, I mean, just for those of you that have never heard a Jacob and I argument on Hereditary, I'm not being facetious when I say it scared the shit out of me. It did scare the shit out of me. Toni Collette's performance was the greatest acting performance in any horror ever. And this is...
We had a conversation about this.
We did have a conversation about this. Yeah. And this is... I'm talking, I mean, I'm not going to say it was better than Anthony Hopkins and Silence of the Lambs. I think those are a little different. But as far as actress and just straight horror, Toni Collette's performance, I mean, that should have gotten an Oscar nod. I mean, it was that good. Yeah. It was so realistic.
I mean, that's how I feel about even Mandy. Like, I don't love Mandy as much as everyone, because the funny part, the ironic part is I love the first half of Mandy. I love the slow shit. But when it goes into sort of like 80s grindhouse, I didn't think it went far enough. I wanted more gore. I wanted more fucked up shit, and it didn't give it to me, and that bummed me out.
I can see where you come from.
Like,
those movies like Hobo with a Shotgun and shit.
It should have been way more fucked up than it was. This is a guy in a revenge quest, and there's barely anything happening. All he does is drink like a semen jar. It's like, okay, that's cool, whatever. But
we're gonna have a side combo about this.
The bathroom scene.
I fucking love that.
And I'm going to argue about this all day.
But the bathroom scene, I think, is one of the best Nick Cage
performances. Jacob said a word, one word that I really wanted to bring up, so I'm just going to hijack this entire conversation real quick, and I'll say, like, for the 2010s and on to today, there's a particular genre of movies that came up that is kind of a tribute to much older films, 70s, 80s, 60s, Grindhouse. And there's a particular in 2008 that there's the Grindhouse double feature by Robert.
Are you pitching your Grindvember right now, Ian?
No. I actually did want to go into this. No, because this is a big thing for me, because I love Grindhouse. I love the new movies and I love the old movies, especially the old movies, and Grindhouse. So in 2007 or 2008 or whenever, with Robert Rodriguez and Quentin Tarantino, they did their Grindhouse double feature. This was going to be my thing for 2010s. They really reignited like that thing, like the drive-in movies, the midnight movies, and everything, and these like very violent, not all necessarily horror movies, but a lot of them are like a lot of slashers and shit.
Yeah.
And so now there's like all these movies since then, like Hobo with a Shotgun, or what, a lot of gore splatterfest, but also a lot of like slashers and stuff, and they're a lot more underground. They're definitely not like in the theater, but a lot of straight to video stuff is in that Grindhouse genre. So yeah. I'm glad that he brought up Grindhouse, because like that's
your favorite. Yeah,
the Grindhouse from 2007, the double feature, really like did a lot to bring that to like mainstream audiences, and it made it
for drive-ins back in, for sure. I hate to cut you off, Ian, but we're incredibly low on time, so I'm going to wrap us up here. To wrap Gary and I up, I just want to give the 2000 to to current day, the 2000 through the 20 teens and the early 2020s, we've just seen a lot. We've seen a resurgent in, the supernatural subgenre. We see the start of found footage. We see the start of torture and gore porn, or at least the continuation of it, and the zombie boom, obviously. So there's a lot happening in this 20-year period. It's not my favorite as much as I love. I just thought The Conjuring and Insidious, as far as bringing supernatural movies back to the forefront, I thought it did a fantastic job. But I'm going to have to say Paranormal Activity was the most influential. It wasn't even my favorite. The first one I thought was good. I didn't really like the other ones. But as far as creating movies on a budget, that is the one that started the trend that we've been following for the last 15 years. And it's still going, even if it's not found footage. Yeah, that would be my pick, would be Paranormal Activity. Yeah. I didn't think it was the best. I just thought it did the most for the franchise of horror in general.
No, it fucked me up whenever I first saw it. Like, I was even watching it. Yeah, I was watching it in college in my dorm room, and a buddy of mine had showed it to me, and it hit things in me that I hadn't actually realized were there. Because, like, my dad, growing up, my dad had night terrors, so I'd hear people scream in the middle of the night, but Paranormal Activity is like, okay, it's not well acted, but the fact that movie is so driven on no score, it's dead silence, and it's like most of the movie is like black screens. So when you hear somebody scream your name in the middle of the night, fucks me up. Fucked me up. Like I couldn't sleep for like a couple nights after watching that fucking movie. Like that was, besides Hereditary, and Evil Dead, that would have been one of my other picks, because it really fucked me up, and it kind of brought back the found footage genre to a degree. Yeah. Like VHS is still pushing it since then. So.
Yeah, and I think there's a lot of other ones. You could throw Saw in there for the start of torture porn, or the continuation of it. You can throw any of the 28 Days Later, the Dawn of the Dead remake, Resident Evil. You can throw any of those in there for the zombie boom.
Chainsaw Massacre.
But Gary, or Texas Chainsaw Massacre. Gary, let's round out with you for tonight. What do you think was the most influential in the 2000s and 2010s?
I'm going to say Pan's Labyrinth, which was, I think, 2006.
Okay, the folklore horror. Nice.
Yeah,
left field.
It had really one of the most terrifying kind of monsters in it. It had because he had like his eyes on his hands, and he had
right there,
like moved all weird and everything.
I hate that thing. Oh my god, it creeps me out. Oh fuck.
It was just a beautifully written story, because it had like a little bit of elements of like mystique, but it was seen from a young girl's perspective, so she would think like putting a root under her mother's bed would make her feel better and like absorb the disease or whatever, and then set smack dab in the middle of like, I guess, the start of World War II, because I think it was in Spain. It was just a beautifully shot film, and just beautifully made, and that's going to be like my pick.
Nice. All right, guys. Well, unfortunately, that is all the time we have for tonight. I know we could go for another couple hours, but people do need to sleep. And unlike me, you guys all have to work tomorrow, except Jackie. I don't know if you're off too, I think.
I'm good.
Yeah, me and Jackie don't have to work. All you other suckers got.
The conversation continues.
Gary's off tomorrow too.
Jonny and Jackie,
and maybe Gary. No, I think for picks, let's go ahead and we're all going to give one recommendation for the week. Don't go into a synopsis on it. Just give us your quick pick, and then we'll go from there. I think we've gone over a lot. Jackie, why don't you start us off with your pick for the week? Your favorite movie that our listeners should view before Halloween.
The House that Jack Built.
Okay.
Ooh,
all right.
Damn,
Ian.
Lars von Trier, eh?
It's a 2019 completely unknown movie called Bliss. Not the same Bliss that I mentioned at the very beginning of the podcast with Salma Hayek. Not that one.
Oh no, that one's good. Yeah, the one you're mentioning now.
2019, drugs and murder.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Jacob.
Perfect Halloween movie is Trick or Treat. That's another one of my 2010s movies.
I love those origins. I love those stories.
It was like 2007, 2008, but that was one of the few movies where it was like so underrated, where I would mention it to people, they have no idea what the fuck I'm talking about. Now you can walk everywhere and it's all over Spirit Halloween.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Which makes me happy. Like before I was like trying to make my own Sam costume because nobody sold one. Now you can find one at every retail store. So that makes me happy.
Yeah.
But yeah, Trick or Treat.
Hell yeah. Gary, how about you?
1993's Hocus Pocus. It's
every year. I love it. Every year.
Yeah.
Great movie. All right. Mine for this year, I gave it about 2 years ago, but I'm going to throw the Babadook in there again. It's a return to practical effects, and it's all about the human psyche, a single mother's journey to, reconcile with the child that she feels she doesn't spend enough time with, and it's all in her own head kind of thing. Anyways, all these are fantastic picks. Guys, I really, really love these horror episodes, and I'm so happy you guys got to join us tonight. Thank you, and please, once again, make sure you check out Jacob and Rhys versus Evil, streaming everywhere that podcasts are hosted, and check out Ian's podcast, the Cult and Trash Horror Movie Grind. And then check out Jackie anywhere that her great B horror movies are sold. Anywhere on Amazon. Oh, man. Guys, that's all the time we got for tonight. Thanks for joining us. For everyone here at I Don't Give a Flick, I'm Johnny.
I'm Gary.
And Neil, join us next week. Have a spooky Halloween, guys. Thank you for tuning in to LeadFeather Productions' podcast of I Don't Give a Flick. Make sure to subscribe to our podcast so that you never miss an episode. Podcasts are available on Apple, Spotify, Google Podcasts, YouTube, and everywhere podcasts are hosted. I Don't Give a Flick is hosted and produced by Johnny Blackburn, Gary Elmore, and Neil Riley. Executive producer Johnny Blackburn, technical director, editor, and audio mixer Gary Elmore. I Don't Give a Flick is a LeadFeather production. Copyright LeadFeather Productions 2021.